Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending where you're on the world. Welcome to this month's live stream here on the channel. My name is Tim Box. I am a mind coach. I'm an anxiety therapist. I'm a remedial hypnotist. Basically what I do, I help people with their anxiety issues every day. That's what I do for a living every day, one-to-one with my clients. And I also run this YouTube channel where I talk about anxiety and just talk about some ideas maybe that help people reduce, lower, and get control of their anxiety. You might have come across me via my TEDx talk that I did about 5 years ago now, but it's still doing the rounds on YouTube, which is called How to Stop Feeling Anxious About Anxiety. That's probably how most people find my channel. You might have read my book called Clear Your Head, which funny enough is all about anxiety and how we live our life without anxiety getting in the way. But every month on the channel, I go live just to answer you guys' questions. Now, this will be a mixture of the questions you've left on my videos and the questions that are in the room this evening. So those people that have taken the time to join, if you have joined, please feel free to kind of say hello and chuck any questions at me you want to. This is your time. This is for you to ask me any questions you want to know the answers to, and I'll give you all the help I can. I do this once a month on the channel, by the way. So it's always kind of, I try and make it like the first Friday of the month as best I can, depending on my own schedule and, you know, the way the diary works out. But yeah, good evening. Let me just say hello to the people that have already commented. Hello, Salvo. Hello, Bob. New member, Bob. Welcome to the members area. I say welcome to the members area. We're not in the members area at the moment, are we? But, you know, I'll know that say hello to you in the members area when I do the live next week. Diane, good evening. Matt, Moonspinners, Stacey. Hey, everyone. How you doing? Hope you're doing okay this fine Friday. Hope you've had a good week. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel absolutely exhausted at the end of this. You know why I feel exhausted? Because I'm going away next week. And I don't know if you have this thing, but when you've got to just get everything done before you go away, and I've had one of those weeks. So if I'm a little low energy, that's why, and I apologize in advance, but I'll try and keep up the energy enough to answer your questions anyway. But I hope you've had a more relaxing week than me, or maybe at least a week less laden with lots of work. It's self-employed lark, isn't all it's cracked up to be, is it? Right, okay. So what I'm going to do, I am going to start with the questions that have been left on the videos on the channel this month. So I've gone back basically as far as I can to since the last live that I did last month, grabbed all the questions that I couldn't just answer in a quick text comment, and I'm going to go through them. There's about, I think, hang on, let me have a look here. I've loaded them up on the system. There's about 5 or 6. And then once I've had a look at them, I will then start to go through your questions for the people in the room. Okay. So, and by the way, if you're watching this on playback, then please feel free to add your questions in the comments below, because obviously they will show up on the system and I can answer them in next month's live, or maybe I can just answer them in the comments if there's something pretty simple that I don't have to elaborate too much on. Okay. Right. Hang on about. Let me get started then. Where's the first one? Okay. Why do some people say they've been suffering for years from anxiety disorder? That makes us anxiety sufferers even more hopeless and full of uncertainty. Right. Well, I guess that's actually a question I get asked a lot. The simple reason is because, yeah, some people are dealing with this for a very long time. And even though anxiety, being one of our emotions, isn't a constant, it can feel at times like it's a constant because we're just aware of it so often. So it's not like people are trying to make us have like a bleak outlook. But I think the thing is, it's not about what people say, it's about what we take from what people say. So our job is to realize that that's their journey, and probably that's their journey because they haven't received the help they needed, or there's something about their approach or about their outlook that is kind of, I was going to say getting in the way. Is that the right way of putting it? But you know what I mean? It's just, it's not helping them get to their destination in terms of their goal for how they want to feel. So when we see these things, and you will see these things, you will see people saying, I have an anxiety disorder. I've been dealing with anxiety for years and years and years, something like that. Doesn't mean you can't change. Doesn't mean they can't change. It just means they haven't changed yet, or they haven't got the desired result yet. So our job isn't to simply It is real tempting, I know, when we're dealing with something that we're struggling with, when we see somebody who is dealing with something similar, it's real tempting to just say, well, to fear whatever they're saying, that's going to be us then. Maybe we hear about somebody who had a complete breakdown because of anxiety, or something really bad happened to them, and we think, well, that's where I'm headed then, the full mental breakdown or something like that. I think it's worth noting that whilst anxiety issues are really, really common, like 1 in 3 people will at some time in their life experience an anxiety issue. And to be fair, those stats are based on people that share that information. There's many people suffering that don't share that information, so it could be a lot higher than that. But of all of those people, it's a very small percentage. Actual full breakdown or full struggles or getting locked in this is quite rare. Because most of the time, what happens, the phrase "this too shall pass" is very appropriate here. Our emotions come and go. Our state changes from moment to moment, day to day, week to week. All we got to do is allow that to happen. So when we don't get too locked in on it, then changes will occur. So don't feel too hopeless just because someone else is in a place where they feel hopeless or they're struggling. I think, as anyone that's a member of the channel will know, or anyone that follows what I do closely enough, you'll know that a lot of the problem in terms of why we don't get past any anxiety issue is because we've been given a certain label and a certain framework. We're asking our subconscious, the bit of us that's in charge of all of our emotional responses and all of our belief systems, we're asking that part to change our responses to certain situations. Okay. Now, that part of our mind won't attempt to do anything it regards to be impossible. For example, I don't spend a lot of time practicing my levitation, okay, because I don't think I'm going to be able to levitate. So I don't engage in that. In the same way, your subconscious won't engage in something it regards to be impossible. So when people are writing in the, in comments on things, or you see people, talk about things on their pages like, I've been dealing with anxiety for years and years and years now, it's probably because they've been given the framework that they will always have an anxiety disorder. That's what they've been given. Now that's not true. Okay, a disordered response simply describes where you are right now, but it's amazing how often it's explained to us, or maybe I should say not explained. We're given this idea that it's a permanent state when it's actually a temporary state. As soon as we change our responses, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave, we no longer qualify for that particular diagnosis. If ever we did, by the way, but that's a whole nother issue. So our job here is to recognize that if somebody has been dealing with this for years, that's just telling you about their journey, not about yours. Okay. I hope that's of help in some way, because I see this a lot. People saying, and to be fair, I get this a lot from clients where they'll talk about, they try not to read stuff about anxiety because you can't get too far into anything about anxiety before you see comments about people saying, oh, it's been 10 years now, it's been 20 years now, something like that. All that's telling you is that's the framework that their mind is working with. And as a result, probably is in no way trying to work outside the perimeters and the parameters, should I say, of what they perceive to be the disordered issue that they have. Hope that makes sense. But maybe some people are watching this video and saying, well, actually, funny enough, that's me. I've been dealing with this for years, and I've been given this idea or this representation that an anxiety disorder is for life. You're just managing it. You can't come the other side of it. And bottom line, that's just not true. I saw a client recently who was telling me that they went to the doctor with in a highly anxious state. Like literally, that's why they were there, because they were like, I desperately need help. And the doctor got them to fill out this questionnaire. I say fill out. She asked the questions and ticked the boxes that the answers were being given. And she said, right, you've scored something like 24 out of 26 on this form, which means you are severely anxious and we need to put you on these meds. And it was like, that's a terrible way of diagnosing an emotional issue, because all that does is says, at this moment, you're in this place. This is how you're looking at the world. And as we know, when we're in a panic mode or a high anxiety mode, we see the world as a lot more fearful, a lot less hopeful than we do when we're in a calmer state. It's like, so at the moment it's 24 out of 26. 10 minutes later, when you've walked down the road and you've walked into the sunshine or something, or your mind's been taken off it, it probably would be a 12 out of 26. Do you know what I mean? It's like, recognize that any diagnosis you've been given can only diagnose you in that moment. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I wonder if there's yeah, I'm just checking comments, so there's nothing too coming back on that. Hang on, I'll come back to all that in a minute. Sorry, if I go quiet, I'm reading little bits, just checking there's nothing, comments in the in the box that says, Tim, your mic's on mute or something like that. As happened before, so it's not as ridiculous as it sounds. I have been on mute before. Right, next one up. I know I shouldn't feel scared because it's an emotion, but I still do. Why? Okay, so this is like the essence of what I deal with. So we need to differentiate between the conscious and the subconscious. We can consciously know what's logical and what's right. But if there's a belief in our subconscious, our conscious will struggle to override that belief, because that's what the subconscious is the 99.9% of everything that's going on up there. The conscious is just the tip of the iceberg. So there's a bit of us saying, I know, I understand now that anxiety can't harm me, it can't damage me, it can't kill me, but still I'm afraid of feeling anxious. Yeah. Now it's worth noting, you might well be not fearful for your safety, but fearful for your potential path to happiness. Yeah, there's a bit of you that says, will I ever be past this? Will it ever be done? Yeah, and I think in those instances, that can create just as big a fear response as actually fearing that it's going to kill us. Yeah, because then it's more like, it's not a threat to our existence, it's a threat to our ongoing happiness. And happiness is what we're here for. That's what our mind is trying to find for us. So if there's a threat to the most important thing on our list of desires, happiness, then that can be deemed to be worthy of a fear response. But the second thing I would say is that recognize that just because we logically know it can't do something bad doesn't mean that that idea is permeated into our subconscious as part of our belief system. So there's a very simple thing that happens, right? We cannot incorporate or adopt as true two beliefs that oppose each other, that are incompatible. We can't basically think that black is also white. Yeah. So when we have a belief about something, we can't just try and jam in a new belief that contradicts it, because our mind doesn't like that. Okay. So the example that I always use is that if we're afraid of spiders, like maybe when we're 4 or 5 years old, mum displays a fear of spiders, jumps on a chair when there's a spider or something. And we say, okay, mum's who we're learning from. She's the one keeping us safe, and she's terrified of that thing. So we must surely have to be scared of it. So we then develop a fear response to spiders. And there's a bit of us then when we get older, we're like, oh, these things are tiny. They can't hurt me. They can't damage me at all. But yet I can't just pick this one up and put it outside because I have this fear response. Yeah, we're trying to jam in this new set of beliefs, but that space is occupied by the truth that spiders are scary, dangerous things. Okay, so what we have to do a lot of the time is kind of address, where did we get that idea from? Could it be false? Could it actually not be true? Can we invalidate the belief we have rather than just trying to, copy and paste something over the top of it, that maybe there's no room for? So in this instance, the spider fear, okay, maybe that was mum's fear of spiders. Maybe she was wrong to believe them to be scary and dangerous. Maybe she picked it up along her journey in life, and maybe I don't have to bear the burden of her beliefs and her fears. Maybe there's more than just blindly accepting what other people give us. Yeah, so a lot of the time it's not just about saying, oh, I know I shouldn't feel this way now because I know it's not true. It's like, yeah, there's a bit of your subconscious, or if those of you in the members area will know, a member of your crew, or if you've seen the TED Talk, member of the crew, that is fervently holding on to this belief because it learned it a long time ago, and as a result, it's not just going to let go of it until you give it the reason why it doesn't have to hold on to it anymore. And don't get me wrong, sometimes the new belief does actually invalidate the old one just automatically, because it incorporates the reason why this wasn't true. But when I see clients, that hasn't happened. The automatic update hasn't happened. So we need to actually address the subconscious directly with that, you know. But in a lot of cases, when it's anxiety, it's not a fear of that it's anything more dangerous than emotion. It's just a fear of, God, will this ever end though? Because it's bloody horrible. It's an uncomfortable feeling, you know. That's why we still have a fear response to it. But you could encourage your mind to downgrade how aggressive it is with the negative emotion. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if we know it's not harmful, then the worst it can be is uncomfortable. And, you know, we've probably done uncomfortable loads of times in our life, haven't we? Uncomfortable doesn't have to be something we are afraid of. It can be something we're not keen to run towards. You know, who'd rather be uncomfortable rather than comfortable? Probably not many people. But we know that we can tolerate it. So maybe we don't have to actually create a fear response. Maybe we can encourage our mind to, you know, downgrade the severity of that response a little bit. You know, how that makes sense to everyone. Right, let's go to the next one. I read once anxiety about sleep causes insomnia. So now each time I go to bed, I get anxious about getting anxiety and not falling asleep ever. My heart starts pounding. Do you have a solution, please? Right. Okay, let's just understand what we're saying here. I read once anxiety about sleep causes insomnia. Right. It's not like this will give you this disease of insomnia. It's like, yeah, anxiety, worrying about things will stop you sleeping. Because you know what, when you're worried, when you're stressing about something, then you create cortisol. And cortisol is the hormone that interrupts melatonin, the sleep hormone. Yeah, so our cortisol melatonin balance is constantly seesawing like this as it goes night and day, awake and asleep, that kind of thing. Yeah. So when we are trying to sleep and our melatonin levels are high, when it's dark, by the way, when there's no more light shining on our retina, we produce melatonin to put us to sleep. And then, of course, our cortisol levels diminish because we're not doing anything. Yeah, we're nothing to stress over, nothing to focus on. If we're then doing something that causes cortisol to rise, causes us to stress, then it counteracts the melatonin, keeps us awake. I mean, put simply, you know, we've all had the experience of lying awake worrying, and that's all you're doing. It's not like anxiety about sleep causes insomnia. It's like, no, if you're anxious about something, it'll probably interrupt your sleep. Yeah, in some way. The next thing to say is not falling asleep ever is not a thing. That don't happen. Yeah, I think the world record for not sleeping is something like 11 days. And that's when you're trying not to. Do you know what I mean? That's when you're really working hard. But your brain needs to recover and recharge. You know, there's a certain amount of and this is the thing as well. If a lot of people have worried about, you know, like, I don't know, getting, you know, psychotic episodes with anxiety. And really, most of the time when we're dealing psychosis-wise and things like that, we're like seeing things that aren't there and hearing things that aren't being said. You know, it's just we haven't slept enough, and a good night's sleep actually fixes it. You'll be surprised how often we think somebody's gone absolutely stark raving mad, and all they really need is a good night's sleep. Because when our brain has given time to recover, it's really good at healing. And really all that's happening when we're experiencing like negative, weird, like to the point of, you know, hallucinating things, is that when you do things with your brain, that's a weird way of putting thinking, you know, but when you do things with your brain, you produce toxins, you produce waste matter, and it needs to redistribute itself via the lymphatic system, I think. Yeah. Not a doctor, but, you know, and that's what happens when we sleep. So basically, when you're not sleeping, you're just filling your head up with a lot of waste matter, which is stopping your brain functioning at its best level. So this is why our system, it doesn't just not sleep. You do sleep. Yeah, you will eventually. Even people that said, I haven't slept for ages. No, you have. You just haven't slept as much as you wanted to. You've just been awake more often than you were comfortable. Yeah, you will sleep. Simple as that. There's no odds. You can't stop it. Okay, so let's get that fear out of your mind, because that's really what's keeping you awake, is the fear of not falling asleep. So here's a solution then. If you want a solution, forget about sleep, because it will happen when you stop thinking about it anyway. But instead of trying to sleep, just appreciate the hours of rest that you now have ahead of you. When you go to bed, stop looking at the bed like a struggle where you're trying to get to sleep, and instead see it as a lovely, comfortable place where you can now do nothing for 8 hours. Oh, what a blessing that is. You know, people, you know how we go on holiday just so we can do nothing? Yeah, just so we can lay in a warm place and do nothing, you know, like with the, you know, on a beach with the sun on us and on a lounger. Yeah. You get to do that every night. Okay, the sun isn't shining on you, but you know what I mean? You get to do nothing in a warm, comfortable place every night. Have we forgotten how great that is? What a luxury that is? Just enjoy your rest. Say, look, I'm going to lay here for 8 hours. Yeah, I'm probably not going to go unconscious, but I'm going to just enjoy the rest. You'll be asleep before you know it. You know, the solution, by the way, to insomnia is very often just, instead of worrying about things or stressing about whether you're asleep, is just encourage your mind to go somewhere that's really comfortable. What I mean is, think about things that don't stress you out. Think about things that don't excite you either. They're just really nice, pleasant things. We've all got things we could think about that are nice, you know, flights of fancy, things that don't really matter, of no consequence, because all that does is it has your mind now allowing the cortisol levels to naturally reduce, and you will doze off before you know it. But that's my thoughts on that. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Anxiety's had a grip on me for so long. I just want to feel free. Hearing your personal story gives me hope that things can actually get better. If you've overcome anxiety, what helped you most? Okay, so this was on my video about my own story, and I think I know this was encouraging people to comment on the video as well, as in terms of what helped them most. I tell you something though, I wanted to actually take this question and just say, the thing that ultimately, when you get the other side of anxiety, if you ask anyone that's got the other side of a severe anxiety issue, most of them give you the same type of answer. They don't say, oh, it was meditation, oh, it was breathing techniques that worked, oh, it was this therapy or that therapy. Most of them will tell you, there just came a point when I stopped worrying about how anxious I was. It didn't seem to be important anymore, important enough to pay attention to. And I don't know, you know, and everyone's got a different path to getting there. Maybe it was, I learned to control my breathing, so then I didn't worry about how anxious I got. Or I learned meditation, so then I didn't worry about how anxious I got. Yeah, or I had a therapist and they taught me that I didn't need to worry about how anxious I got. It was all of that. It's the point where your mind stops regarding anxiety itself, how anxious you are, as anything worth paying attention to. Doesn't give you any information, neither positive or negative, just of no importance at all. Because remember, anxiety is the emotion that is designed to it tells you something's important. Pay attention to it. That's it. It's not fear. It's not a different type of fear. No, it's the emotion your mind uses to say, pay attention to this. I think it's the most important thing to pay attention to right now. So as soon as you can get into your, you know, in your belief system, understanding that, well, anxiety, how anxious I am, isn't anything that's important, then you'll stop noticing it. You'll stop paying attention to it. You'll stop creating it. Yeah. So I know this was, the comment was actually to people watching the video and commenting on it and saying, oh, share our stories, how we got through it. But generally speaking, that's the bottom line there, you know. Cool. What happens when anxiety causes your nerves to be completely sensitized, where the symptoms persist 24/7, even when you feel safe? Okay, so again, I'm gonna have issue with the 24/7. Yeah, and I appreciate there's going to be a general perception that I'm never really calm, I'm never really relaxed, I'm never really coming down. But the thing is, you can't go 24/7 for more than a few days without actually coming down from that state, because you will at some point go unconscious. And most of us will struggle to not go unconscious at some point every 24 hours. Yeah, and I know we've probably all got stories of, I haven't slept for this long. I didn't get any sleep last night. Yes, you did. You just didn't notice it. Yeah. There are times, right, when I'm absolutely adamant. You would think, no, I've definitely been awake for the last like half hour or 45 minutes. And then my wife tells me, no, you were literally snoring 5 minutes ago. Because we dip in and out so quickly, we don't notice the loss of time. So it happens, right? Which means you are not in a highly anxious, sensitized state, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to fall unconscious. So firstly, that's the thing to note here, is that it's our perception of what's going on that gives us a slightly altered perspective on things. Yeah. Secondly, instead of thinking about it like a sensitized nervous system, think of it like you've got a part of your subconscious that is just really, really hyper aware of how you feel. And it is really concerned about how you feel, because for whatever reason, that's become the biggest cause of concern. Am I okay? Is there something wrong with me? Am I checking? I'm checking constantly. Everyone, by the way, everyone that's watching this video probably would be able to tell us, when you're checking to see how anxious you are, you'd probably be able to tell me what you're checking for, right? So some people will be checking, well, I'll check, I'll check my pulse, or I'll check the tightness in my chest. I'll check my breathing. Can I take a nice deep breath in or not? I'll check if I've got any stomach issues going on. Is my tummy rumbling or something? You'll all have the thing. How dizzy am I right now? If I'll do a quick check to see if I feel dissociated or not. Everyone has their thing they check to see if they're anxious. Now, as a result of that, this thing called the nocebo effect kicks in, which is basically the opposite of the placebo effect, which is where we focus so much on a potential negative symptom that we create that symptom. We imagine it so vividly that we convince ourselves that it is actually occurring. Yeah. Not a malfunction. It's just, hey, our mind is amazing. It just is. Yeah. So think of it more like you've got a part of your mind that's really, really sensitive to the way you feel. And when it notices anything going wrong, and remember, it might actually be creating that sensation or convincing itself of that, but it hits the alarm bell. So it puts you into a highly sensitized, highly anxious state at the very drop of a hat. I would rather think about things that way than say, is this general anxiety or is it a sensitized nervous system? Because it's all kind of, I don't want to say the same thing, because I know the person asking this question was very clear that they don't regard it as the same thing. And I totally understand why that is. Yeah. But I think if we think about it on those terms, then it gives us a good chance of working with that part of us, rather than just saying, well, unfortunately, I've oversensitized my nervous system, so, I'm screwed. Yeah. We want to take our agency back here, and working with our mind in terms of what it might be doing. That's how we get the good results. Yeah. That's how we change it. Anyway. But moon spinners, you were saying, I check my breathing and my heart rate. Stacey agrees with that. Yeah, exactly. That's a real common one, isn't it? The rate of your breathing. And also a real common one as well is about, can I take a big deep breath in, or do I feel like my chest is constricted and things like that? It's really common. But it's weird because there's always the one thing that you fix on as a person. I say one, it could be more than one, but I've heard over many, many years of seeing clients, there's the one sensation or symptom, if we're going to use that word, that they always return to, they always come back to. But yeah. But think about it like that. You've got a member of your crew, a part of your subconscious, on really high alert about this stuff, and that's why it keeps raising the alarm bell. So our job really is to let that part know that, hey, yeah, okay, so breathing is shallower. Our heart rate is higher, and what? Yeah, human beings are quite difficult to kill off, right? Somebody said that once the other day, a while ago online. I thought that's a great way of putting it. And you know how they tend not to be killed off is just by you thinking about it. You can't think yourself to death. Okay. You can think to the point where you go into a panic state. You can think to the point where your heart rate increases so much it feels like it's bursting out your chest, but you cannot think yourself to death. So when you're focusing on these things, recognize there's actually no threat offered by them, and they will pass, like all things do. Moon spinners, you're saying, as soon as my heart races, I get scared of having a panic attack. Yeah, there's only one thing that can cause a panic attack, and that's you panicking about something. It's not whether, oh, my heart rate, it doesn't happen to you. Yeah, it's not happening, it's a doing. You don't have a panic attack. There's nothing attacking you. It's not you having it. It's a bit of your mind deliberately hitting the panic button, announcing red alert. Yeah, up here. And recognize that when you realize your heart is racing, that's a real human thing. Everybody's heart races at some point on a daily basis. Most people don't notice it because most people, their subconscious isn't flagging it up as a problem. Your subconscious absolutely is. Whenever your heart rate changes, probably even fluctuates slightly, your subconscious says, oh my God, this could be a panic attack. But it's not that random thing striking that is the panic attack. It's then you responding to that with panic. So if you can, let that part of you know, hey, good news here. Turns out this is not just something happening to us. This is just a very natural process. Bear in mind, by the way, and I know I've said this a lot on the channel, but some of you are going to be new here because this is an all channel live rather than a members live. But your body does lots of weird things on a daily basis. You are constantly processing the input and the output of energy. You take in food and drink, you do things with your body and your mind. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean your body's just going to do the same thing at the same rate, because it's constantly, exercise, movement, food, rest. It has to adapt. The heart rate goes up and down. The breathing quickens and slows. And a lot of the time, we might think, but I'm just sitting here on my sofa and suddenly my heart seems to have started going really fast. Yeah, probably a bit of chicken from an hour ago or something. You know what I mean? That we just don't know what our body is doing because it's all going on in your subconscious. What a remarkable machine we have. It isn't the heart suddenly quickening a little bit that is the onset of a panic attack. That's just your body processing what it needs to process. The panic occurs when we say, oh no, my heart rate has changed. And then we react to it. We hit the panic button ourselves. I hope that makes some sense. I hope that's of value in some way, that thought, that idea. Okay. Stacey's a member for 2 months. I've just seen come up on the thing. Well, congratulations, Stacey. Lovely to have you in the membership area. 2 months. By the way, if you're interested in seeing lives with me about anxiety every week, every Wednesday, in fact, then we do have a members area that I've mentioned a few times now. There you go. Become a member of the channel for exclusive videos and live streams. I believe the link is in the description of this video. If not, there's a join button on the homepage. So you're going to hear me talk sometimes about using the control system, dealing directly with your crew, the things that I can't do when I'm just talking to people, the things where it involves you actually working with your subconscious. You'll hear me talking about that a little bit. The members area has all the tutorial videos on how to do that. It also has all the anxiety clear your head program stuff that was based on the book that I wrote. And it also has the weekly live streams. So you get to ask me these questions on a weekly basis every Wednesday. So if you're interested in that, you feel like what I'm saying is resonating with you, is providing you with some solace, with some peace of mind, and allowing you to get a better control of anxiety, then feel free to join the members area, and we'll see you there. Okay, right, let's get onto these comments in the room. Okay, let's start with Salvo. Evening, Salvo. Hi, Tim. Working on the test now. So just to bring up to speed people who are not in the members area, Salvo doing driving tests, and that was what caused ages ago. That was kind of the origin story of Salvo's journey with anxiety, based on kind of freaking out about a driving test and experiencing panic and that kind of thing. That was a big part of the story. Used SUDS, that should say, not SUDO, to determine the difficulty of doing it. Was 12 out of 10, pure pain. Now it's 0 out of 10, feels neutral. Excellent stuff. So SUDS, for those who don't know, subjective units of distress or disorder or dysfunction, depends what the D stands for, depending on the context of it. But we use these sorts of things just to talk about how bad it feels when we think about this stuff, how bad the anxiety is coming forward. So 12 out of 10, that's quite severe. And we do the work, get it down to 0 out of 10. Good stuff. On to step 2. elaborate all the painful memories, do some quick drivings to tell my mind that I'm fine and all trauma and so on, it's done. Since I never was ill, so my recovery is just reorder the mind. Yeah, reframe what's gone on there. So because I think that was another thing we said, wasn't it? That a lot of the issue was that you had a perception that anxiety was an illness that had flared up now, rather than just an emotional response to a challenge. Yeah, good stuff. Have any other advice on what I should work on? Funny thing is, I'm not scared of the test. I'm scared that my mind will not be ready to handle the stress since the trauma it had in the past. Yeah. See, okay, this is the thing that happens, right? We know we can handle the thing. You know, we're never anxious about the thing. We're anxious about our perceived ability to cope with the thing. And if we've gone through it before and had a really high anxiety response, then a bit of us, when we go to embark upon that challenge again, says, hang on, we came a cropper last time. I think I know how to do it. I think I'm prepared for it. But what if my fragile mind can't take it again? And this is the point we're making. It wasn't the test that caused it all to get out of control. You had, Salvo, probably what we would regard as an appropriate response to a really big challenge. I don't know if there's a person who is watching this video now, who will ever watch this video, who wasn't and won't be really nervous on their driving test. I know I was. I regard it as one of the most nervy things I've ever done is do my driving test, you know. But what your mind needs to know is that it was just unfortunate that where this process was going on over a long period of time and it was getting more and more stressful for you, you started to perceive anxiety itself as the problem. You started to perceive yourself as having a panic issue. And the reason why you can handle this now is because now you know this is just an emotion. This was just an appropriate response to a great deal of challenge, you know, what was perceived to be a high level of challenge. So even though, yes, I think it would be okay if you felt really nervous on your driving test, the one thing you won't do is then instantly, automatically, suddenly go to that place where, oh no, my anxiety is flaring up, because you know now that's not what happened. That's not what happens. Yeah. It doesn't just flare up out of nowhere. There's reasons behind things. So that's what I'd probably be looking to focus on. One last bit there. Also, when maybe we ask to release memories or change the view of the test, should I ask for a better emotional response like neutral or excited? I think the parts of the mind need a new job. Maybe they do. You could do that. If it feels right for you, then absolutely. And I think excited would be an absolutely appropriate emotion for doing your driving test. You know, it's one of those things where we go in there fearing failure, but really we should be excited about success, shouldn't we? Because when you do your driving test, you only have to do it ever once in your life. You only have to pass it once, and then that's it. And you have freedom. Suddenly you can drive. You know, it's one of those rare moments in your life where you do some sort of test or exam and you will never have to do anything like that again. Yeah, like even if you do an exam at school, you know you've got more exams to come. If you do something, you have a challenge at work, you know you'll have another challenge at work tomorrow. Or this is just one driving test, all of the glory completed. You can look back on that, and it would take a skill with you that you will never again have to refresh or redo. Hopefully, I mean, you know, with all being well. So you know. So that, yeah, excitement would be a good way of doing it. Let's skip down here. Hey Matt, Stacey. I've said hello to everyone actually, haven't I? Stacey, you're feeling a bit naff. Been a long day now, and I'm laid up. Oh, with the flu. Okay, yeah, flu can. This is worth pointing out here. Sorry to hear you laid up with the flu, Stacey. Hope you feel better soon. Anytime we're ill, there is a bit of us that recognizes we are low on resources, and that's why it can make anxiety worse, because whenever we feel low on resources, a bit of us is feeling like, well, all the challenges that I otherwise could handle, I can't handle them. So we might feel a little bit more concerned about the approaching day or the approaching tasks that we've got to do. Yeah. But that's okay, because that's natural. Just, anyway, anytime you're ill, take the time to get better, you know. Don't put pressure on yourself. That'll help. That'll lower anxiety if you just put pressure off yourself and let yourself be, and let your body heal, you know. Hey, Diane. I must say I've had a fantastic relationship with my anxiety because I slept well this week. I put my anxious feelings in a separate compartment and I went about my week. Wow, big win for me. Congratulations. Superb stuff to hear, Diane. Exactly. This is the thing. We have this thing called like the most important task of the day. This is like the insight that we talk about as control practitioners when it comes to sleep. Because oftentimes we let our concerns interrupt our sleep. And the point I always want to make to our crew is that, look, it doesn't matter what we're working on, doesn't matter what's going on in the world, doesn't matter what challenges we have been facing or might face tomorrow. When we lay our head on the pillow at night, the lights go out, we are doing that for one reason only, and that is because we are there to get sleep. So all of your crew can knock off for the day. Doesn't matter what they're in the middle of working on, because, captain of the ship has said, it's time to sleep. Aye, aye, captain, that's all we got to do. And the reason for that is because any challenge we are facing, we will handle much better if we've had a good night's sleep. Simple rule, simple principle. I used to see a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners when I was networking, and they were chronic for having this thing of, well, I work really late, and then if I've got more work to do, I'll sacrifice a bit of sleep, or they'll always be constantly thinking about their work when they're laying in bed, because if they don't do it, no one else is doing it. The buck stops with them. And the motivation there was their crew was trying to get more and more done, trying to stay on top of everything. But as a result, they were falling further and further behind because they weren't sleeping well. So they'd wake up, they'd be low on resources, their battery would be almost diminished and depleted, and they'd make bad choices. They'd have to do things over and over again. They wouldn't be as effective. They wouldn't be thinking as clearly. And so they were getting less and less and less done. The best strategy for getting the most done is prioritize your sleep. This is the problem with all the hustle culture stuff. It's like, well, if you've got hours you could be working, then work, make your mark and move forward. It's like, no, you're literally being the least effective you could be if you do that. Human beings work on a basically, 2-to-1 recycle rate, 8 hours off, 16 hours on. That's our recycle rate as a human being. If we deviate from that, all we do is gradually diminish. So yeah. Excellent idea. Compartmentalize stuff. Sleep, there's only one thing you're there for. Very important, sleep. It's the kind of the cornerstone of everything that we want to do. It's the linchpin to all of our emotional well-being. Moonspin, it's good to hear you've had a good day too. Excellent stuff. Sadie, does anxiety cause hair loss? Right. You know what? I don't know. I think stress and I think it does. I'm not an expert in that field. I've got to be honest. That's come out of left field, and I've not done any research into that. Probably other people in the room could tell you more than that. I would hazard a guess to say it probably could, because there's knock-on effects to feeling stressed and anxious. I think it probably could, yeah. But I wouldn't be able to tell you the science behind it. But I think anytime we're experiencing stuff like that, looking after ourselves is the way to go, isn't it? Showing ourselves some self-care and reducing stress and anxiety is one of those things we need to do. So, yeah, maybe. But as you can probably tell, don't take that as the voice of authority for that particular question. Hang on, Moonspinners. I was told when I was 4 that I can't and shouldn't feel scared. I spent 50 years trying to get rid of anxiety, so I've mostly just been in that being anxious. Oh, wow. So, okay, right from the age of 4, you were told you're not allowed to feel any fear or anxiety. And yet, 4-year-old, of course, you're going to. So you're probably then being anxious about having those feelings. Classic case of the beliefs or what we perceive to be the beliefs of our parents impacting upon us and then going forward with that. Yeah, that would be what you'd need to work on then, is give yourself permission to say, hey, it's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel scared. We don't know everything. We know we're not invulnerable. We know we're not. But here's the thing. I would suggest as well, the good news is you don't have to feel as scared as you did when you were 4, because, hey, as a 4-year-old, we don't have as many countermeasures or emotional strategies against what the world might throw at us. Yeah. Also, saying you're not allowed to feel scared or anxious, it does kind of imply, doesn't it, that there's things to be scared about, but you're not allowed to be, which again, I don't think is You know, I'd need to know a bit more there to be able to give you a definitive answer, I think. But yeah, that's allow yourself permission to feel how you feel. Some days we'll feel like we can take on the world. We're invulnerable. Other days we'll feel absolutely fragile, you know, breakable. It's okay, you know. Also, Tim, how can we tell if a response comes from the unconscious or if it's just a conscious thought? Sometimes I wonder, is that me or him thinking when I ask for the reason of an objection? Okay, here's the thing. If the thought has come to you, it's your subconscious. Okay, let me get this. I heard it explained to me this way once, and I quite like this explanation. I haven't thought about it enough to know whether I completely fully agree with it, but think of it like this. Your subconscious is like a room in darkness, and the conscious is like a torch. Yeah, that your conscious is your awareness of what's in the room. It's not what's in the room itself. If you have a thought, it simply means you've shone the torch on that particular thing in the room. Yeah. So, in other words, when it comes forward into your conscious awareness, it isn't you consciously deciding that. It's a bit of your subconscious saying, it might be this, Salvo. Have you thought about this? Now, consciously, you get to decide whether to shine the torch on that or not, whether to investigate a little bit further. Yeah. But ultimately, conscious isn't coming up with the thoughts. It's just filtering them and working with them. Yeah. The captain isn't moving anything about the ship. It's just trying to direct what the crew are doing and becoming aware of what suggestions they're giving and hopefully deciding on and influencing, you know. Hope that makes sense. You know. Okay. Hang on. Where have I got? I've just, you know what I've done? I did that thing of scrolling down after I'd unselected the comment, and now I've lost my place. Gosh darn it. Hang on. I know where I am. Got it. Right. Tony, when I try to do things free, it's like my anxiety wants to interrupt my mind. How to refocus when you're so afraid of how you feel? Right. Your anxiety doesn't want to interrupt you. It wants to keep you safe, I think. So if you go to do things that it regards as maybe not necessarily dangerous, but just not the best idea, then it will step in. But the problem is that when we're in a fearful state, of course, there's always going to be some part of our subconscious whose job it deems it to be to come in and just say, "Are you sure about that?" You know, it's like the health and safety officer. It's like, "What are you doing there? Show me what you're doing." You know, and yeah, nobody likes the health and safety officer on site. Okay, because they're constantly making us work in a way that slows us down, and we have to be super meticulous and go over every little, nut and bolt. But ultimately, that part, the health and safety officer believes his job is really valuable. Okay, so I would suggest you don't need to be afraid of how you feel, and you don't need to fear the health and safety officer. Just treat it like a part of you that, hey, it's just kind of trying to look after me. It's there with the best intentions, and if you came a cropper, it'd just feel really bad that it hadn't done its job. But treat it less like a well-informed, well-educated health and safety officer. It's more like a babysitter that is just a little bit overzealous. It's a little bit like I don't know. It's like when the baby stumbles towards the open fire. The babysitter is like, "Oh my God, come away from there." But recognizing that, hey, I'm not a baby. I know not to put my hand in the fire. Maybe that will encourage that part to realize, oh, actually, I don't have to be quite so attentive. I don't have to be quite so aggressive with my safety measures here. It's got a bit you're trying to look after you, Tony. If you don't put it this way, if you don't exhibit fear, I don't mean exhibit fear like you just try and, bottle it up. I mean, know that there's nothing to be afraid of from that part. And that part will be appeased by the fact you don't seem to be fearing what's going on anymore. Yeah. If that makes sense. Diane, Tim, when you talk about resting in bed, not looking at the clock, darkness really works. It's almost daylight savings time. Yikes. Yeah, I guess so. But that's certainly, so for you, that would be a thing then. Yeah, like, so not looking at the clock and having darkness and things like that. Yeah, everyone's got their own strategies here. Some people have like blackout curtains. Some people, Brit, my other half, wears a mask. She's got mask, earplugs. It's like she sleeps like a bloody log as well. You know, when that's in, there's no waking her. And that's great because she used to really struggle to sleep as well. So it's quite nice that she's found what helps her to sleep. But again, I think mostly it's peace of mind that helped her. You know, knowing that she's because she's this thing of she's very sensitive to light and noise. She's like, what's that? You know, because she's historically in her life hasn't always felt safe. Yeah, so accompanied with knowing she's safe now because I'm there. I mean, I'm not like great hero, but you know what I mean. I'm not trying to suggest that, but because she's got a loving partner and it's not just her on her own. That's one reason. And not having the stuff that actually invades her senses and makes her feel like she's got what's that, you know, that helps. So yeah, however, whatever works for you though, whatever works for you, you know. Yes, so we were saying about what do we check? Yeah. I'm just skipping through now, just the general ones that are little comments. I can't. Nev, good evening. Hi, Tim. So I've been dealing with not feeling like I'm in control of my body, especially in social situations or situations where I feel trapped, like doctor's appointment or being in a classroom. Usually it'll be about emetophobia, but more recently I've been scared of laughing in inappropriate situations. It's weirdly specific and the fear came out of nowhere, or I'm scared if I start laughing, I won't be able to stop and I'll look insane. Okay, so but here's the thing though, that comes with a fear of looking insane. Yeah. And what? I don't know. I think sometimes we worry what other people will think too much. And there's a few things here that would be worth noting. Firstly, they don't think half as much as we think they do. They're not interested in you. Even the people that are interested in you are not that interested in you because they're worried about their own shit. They're worried about how they're going to appear. Yeah. So there's literally no point in pondering it because we imagine all eyes are on us. If I make a noise, everyone's going to zoom in on me. No, they're not. They're concerned with their own stuff. Yeah. And secondly, even if they were really concerned, and what? I get why we come from this place. You know, you're talking to somebody who dealt with a whole load of social anxiety, fear of rejection, fear of ridicule. Yeah. But that was because when I was having that, I was at school. And if you did something wrong, people took the piss out of you. And it was a negative experience. I witnessed people getting bullied. I experienced a bit of it myself. And a bit of me said, keep your head down. Don't get noticed. Negative attention. You need to watch out for that. Yeah. Because it was that environment where the weak got picked off. Yeah. It's like the wildebeest on the African plains. The ones on the outskirts get picked off by the lions. The ones in the center of the herd are safe. So need to get to the center of the herd, need to be liked, need to be like everyone else. Yeah. But now when we're adults, and to be fair, that was a false representation, wasn't it? We learn all these social strategies for fitting in and being like other people. And then we go out into the real world and it's like, oh no, I just realized now to get somewhere, I need to stand out. I need to be noticed for the promotion or to get the job or to win the partner or get noticed in a club and find somebody to cop off with at the end of the night. You know, it's like this cop off with, that's an English phrase. But point being, you know, we want to find a life partner is what I'm saying. Point being is that all of our strategies that we might have adopted at that time maybe don't translate so well when now it's not just 30 people who have to deal with each other or tough. Now it's like 8 billion people. Yeah, the only reason we were in an environment where it was harsh on us if we did something different or noticeable or stood out in any way or laughed weirdly. Yeah, the only reason that was bad is because the people couldn't just say, Nev's a bit weird. I might find someone else to hang out with. No, because you had a classroom of people and you always had to deal with each other every day, whether you liked it or not. So as a result, people would push back against the people they didn't like. Yeah, and obviously kids are not you haven't got the same level of empathy either when you're a kid. But as an adult, anyone that feels like, Nev, you laugh a bit weird, you sounded like you were nuts there. Okay, if they're not your person, they're not your person. But there's, another 8 billion people, and you'll probably find your person. These things don't matter anymore. Don't be afraid to stand out. One of my favorite quotes: nobody ordinary did anything worthwhile anyway. So don't be afraid to be you, because nobody's that interested, and nothing matters about it anyway. Even if people were interested, it would be just a moment, and then they'd pass on and do something else, get back to focusing on their own life, which is what they wanted to do anyway. Hope that's of use. Went on a bit of a rant there. Sorry. I care a lot about that one, because that was my journey. So, Mike, I have 2 or 3 days where my anxiety gets better and then it gets worse. The antidepressants and therapy is not working. I'm starting to think this is going to be my life from now on. I broke into tears. I'm so sorry, mate. I'm so sorry that's how you're feeling. Just know it won't be. Yeah. Antidepressants and therapy is not working. I think don't put pressure on it to work, right? And this is the problem here. At the moment, you're feeling anxious and you're like, what are my countermeasures? Antidepressants, therapy. Let's douse the anxiety. Let's get the antibodies against the anxiety. No. Anxiety is something your mind is doing. Yeah. When it stops doing it, you won't have to take antidepressants, have therapy, learn this technique, adopt this countermeasure, because your natural default state is calm, is not anxious. Yeah. I mean, I'm not highly anxious. You hear me say a lot, anxiety is a natural emotion. Oh, something important. Right. I'm focused on that. I'm anxious about that. That's normal. Yeah. And life happens. We react to it. The thing that won't always happen is when you stop being anxious about anxiety, stop desperately trying to implement a countermeasure, then you'll just notice that it stops becoming, you stop doing anxiety. Yeah. It's like, oh, how can I explain this? It's like, okay, it's like there's music playing in the room and you're like, I can't hear myself talk, so I need to shout over the music. No, you need to stop playing the music, because then you can just whisper. Yeah, at the moment, you're like, this anxiety is flared up. I need to do something to push it down. It's like, no, you don't have to do anything. It's the doing that's the problem. You're doing the anxiety. It's like, well, when you stop focusing on it so much, that will calm down. Yeah. It's really common to have 2 or 3 days where it's better and then 2 or 3 days where it's worse, because we do this thing where it's quite easy to calm anxiety down because we just get tired of focusing on it. And so we don't stoke the flames of it anymore. But then at some point, life throws us something where we feel slightly more anxious than we did yesterday. And then a bit of us says, oh no, anxiety is back. And then we get anxious about that, because we're invested in our countermeasures against anxiety, which is the problem. And I know this is it's paradoxical. Here we are on a channel dealing with anxiety, and I'm telling you, don't worry about anxiety. But of course you are, because that's why you're here. But ultimately, that's the solution, is the moment when we realize, actually, I don't need to do something to douse anxiety. I need to just stop doing anxiety. This is why when people talk about acceptance, they're not saying actively accept anxiety. They're saying stop resisting it. Stop feeling like it's wrong to feel that way. It's the reacting to it that is the issue, not the anxiety itself. I hope that makes sense, Mike, because it's a real common thing that you're going through right now. And I'm so sorry you're feeling so bad. When you I broke into tears, I really am. I feel for you. I really do. But you got this. This will pass. Yeah. How do I pronounce that? 05 Dan Me. I can't seem to concentrate on anything. My mind remembers anxiety and then gets stuck thinking and focusing on feeling anxious. Any way to stop this? Yeah, anxiety, feeling anxious and focusing on anxiety. You can concentrate on something perfectly well. You can concentrate on anxiety because that's what you're doing. At the moment, you have a number of things that might be important in your life. I don't know where you are, whether you're at work or at school or whatever, what stage of your life you're at, but there's a project at work, or there's an essay I've got to do at school, or there's groceries that I've got to do, or I've got to pay that bill. And these are things that maybe, at different times will you know, it's like a little graphic equalizer. They'll become less and more important. But the thing that's the highest, that's at the peak, will be the thing that you consciously focus on. Yeah. And as it is at the moment, anxiety is the thing that is most important. So everything you try and focus on except anxiety, it's a struggle, because your subconscious is constantly saying, no, anxiety though, but anxiety. So anything else is sort of, it's drowned out by it. So what you will find is that when you stop concerning yourself with how anxious you feel, yeah, and you say, well, I'll feel how I feel, that's fine, then you'll find that you can steer your concentration to other things other than anxiety. But at the moment, you feel like you can't concentrate on anything because you're trying to concentrate on this, and your subconscious is saying, no, this is more important because this is the threat. And that's the point here. Anxiety is not a threat to you. It's one of your emotions. As soon as you understand that and the importance diminishes, this other thing you'll be able to concentrate on fine. Yeah, this is not anything breaking about your mind. This is just a very natural response, you know. Okay. Stacey, I just don't have the energy. Then it makes me panic more. Worry. Oh, that's what we're saying about when you're ill. Yeah, absolutely. Energy levels depleted, it will do it. Yeah. So lift, you know, whatever's on your schedule, just wipe it out. Let yourself be ill, Stacey. You know, let yourself get better. Yeah. Stacey put the point, don't Google anything. Yeah, absolutely. Google is not the best thing when you're dealing with anxiety about how you feel or your health, things like that. Stacey, you've got weighted plushies, weighted blanket, lavender oil, lavender room spray. I hear good things about all of those. Again, Britt has a weighted blanket that she has. She's got all the measures, hasn't she? And talking of Britt, she's just opened the door of the room because I said to her, if I go over an hour, nudge me and let me know. And here I am at an hour and 2 minutes. She's actually 2 minutes, 45 seconds late. She should have been in here before now. Okay, so this is my call to finish the live. That's my dinner's ready call. Okay, guys. I hope you're all well. Have a good week. If I'm seeing you guys next week on the members live, if I'm not seeing you on the members live, then have a good month. I will be back next month to answer your questions. And as I say, let me just put that up again. If you like what you've heard here, if it's been of value to you, if you would like to hear me more often than just once a month, then you can become a member of the channel. The lives are every Wednesday at the same time, 6 p.m. UK times, whatever time it was for you in your country, in your territory. Join me at that time every Wednesday. The membership is just £9 a month, and so basically it's like less than a coffee a week, and every week you'll get some personal attention from me. Okay. But I hope that's good for everyone. Have a fantastic, until I see you next time, and a nice relaxing weekend as well. Here we are, Friday evenings. Have a good weekend. Take some time for you. The weekend is time to rest and relax and recover. So, and always remember, as I always say, be kind to your mind. I'll see you next time.